Hey everyone, so here we have something that's very common. You've probably already experienced it, and if you haven't, you probably will at some point. Controller drift, joysticks. In this one here, we got a wonky left joystick. So, let's replace it. So first things first, we're going to take the controller apart. 4 screws in the back. Of course, each controller is different, but this is a PS4 controller, and that's what we're working on. Four screws. So, take the 4 out. Just lay them aside. Controller pops apart. Just like that. Undo your ribbon. Push it aside. Battery. Disconnect you. Put you over there. One more screw for the battery tray. Lift you up. Lay them aside. Unplug your touchpad. Little locking clasp. Lift it up. Let's take our joysticks off. Alright. First things first. These motors, wires, these gotta come off. We'll resolder those when we're done. For now, we're gonna put the guts of the controller aside. So here's a PS4 controller board. Not a whole lot to it. Here's your joystick modules, pretty common. And these little fellas right here on the sides, they're called potentiometers, and that's the source of your drift. Some people replace these and leave the joystick module. I'm not a fan of that, mostly because once one starts to drift, the other is probably not too far behind, and it's just best to replace the entire thing, and then at least you're starting fresh with a brand new module, and you don't need to worry about drift down the road, at least not too soon. Anyway, let's get the bugger out. So, take out my handy dandy little stand. I have a few other, but they're clunky and they're big, and I like this one. So the very first thing I'm going to do is apply some solder to the pins. A lot of these controllers, they use lead-free solder, so it's a little bit of a pain in the hole to try to remove without some difficulty. Easy way around that is just apply some fresh solder. You can use low melt. Honestly, it doesn't really matter if it's low melt or if it's just regular 60-40. As long as you're diluting it, the lead-free will flow, and you'd be able to clean it up, and clean up your vias. So what I like to do is I like to apply, and then I like to remove. This is not clearing the holes. I'll use hot air for that. Ooh, smoke. I'm avoiding my fume extractor right now because it's noisy, and I don't want it to muffle my audio. So I will graciously inhale this lovely byproduct of solder. I'm sure it's not harmful. Anyway, and now I'll just apply some more to each pin. Not a lot, it just helps with the flow. That's all it is. And ground. You perfect. Get you out of the way. Okay. Next, hot air. So we are going to push this up to 430 degrees. This is what I have it preset on. I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to leave it as it is. So this is basically just blowing hot air on the pins. It's going to flow the solder. It's going to allow me to safely and easily pull the entire module out of its socket without damaging the board, which is obviously very key. Just Heating it up around. Don't worry about all that flux that's flowing around. I'm going to clean all that up after with some Q-tips and some alcohol. It only takes a minute or two. I'm just moving it around, getting the heat into the pads, allows it to solder to flow. We're not ready yet. I'm going to tilt you up a little. There we go. Ooh, that is hot. And there we go. Here's your old module. Junk. Oh, I'm done with the hot air. And now I'll clean up those vias. You can also use wick. I'll use it most times, but I do like the suckers when the modules are removed because it usually clears the via every time. And I'm not making a mess of wick. There we go. So, as you can see, holes are clear, and on the other side, we got a little bit of flux. Again, I'll clean all that up just to make people at home happy. Let's just clean a little bit up right now. There we go. So we're ready for a new module. Right here. Get it in place. Line up all the holes. Sometimes there we go. And you're in. Sandwiched through, sitting in. And now it's time to solder it. So these can be a little bit tricky to make sure that it sits level. So what I like to do is solder two legs before I put it in place. And while I'm holding it on the bottom like this, I'm pushing it in, just keeping it flat to the board. And make sure it doesn't lift, it doesn't move, and it sits flat after I'm done. So I just want to touch it. I don't care if it's pretty. I'll clean it up after. I'm just using it to hold. That's it. There. And now I can throw that back on. More flux. Very important. If any of you at home are thinking about trying soldering for yourself, it's not necessarily the tools you use, it's how you use them. And one of the most important tools you can use when soldering is flux. It is your friend. It can be messy, mostly is. You can get no clean flux, which I find totally garbage. You can get smokeless, you can get halogen free, lots of options. Old school rosin flux, super messy, very effective. Either way, whatever it is, it takes a couple minutes after you're done. Clean up your points. You're not a caveman. You like to keep it pretty. Anyway. Ooh, I'm knocking everything over. So that's done, that's soldered. Now, just so that I don't have people inboxing me saying it's messy, let's clean up some of that gross old flux. Make these points shine. And mostly, when I'm done replacing the modules, especially in PS4 controllers, Sony likes to just using a tremendous amount of flux on most of their devices. And I find it incredibly annoying that they don't actually clean their boards before they assemble their controllers. Hard to see here, but maybe you can. There you go. Notice, see all the shiny, the gloss? That's dried in flux. That's a stock module. That was like that from factory. I don't like that. I know they're made by machines and mass assembly lines and whatnot, but come on. I'm sure they can come up with some kind of a electrostatic, ultrasonic kind of cleaning machine like they do with jewelry or something. Just get the fucking flux off of it. It doesn't need to be as bad as they sell them like that. It only takes a second. Microsoft cleans their boards. Not great, but at least they try. Sony, you can do better. At least you're not Nintendo. I won't go there. It's another night. Anyway. Shiny. Nice and glossy. Points are perfect. Ready to reassemble. So, you take your controller guts. Let's bring that back. You want to take your joysticks, wherever I put them. Right here. Joystick caps just snap onto the boards like this. Slide over the top. Here we go. See? Put that down into your controller. And there we go. Touchscreen's back in. And now we're going to solder our ribbons back on. Now, on these, when apart and looking at them from this direction, the left side is black on the bottom, red on the top. And what I mean by that is the position of the wires on those pads. Red on the top, black on the bottom. And on this side, red is on the bottom. I don't know why they made this so very confusing. They changed it, but anyway, it is what it is. Again, if you're attempting it yourself, something to be mindful of. I need smaller hands. Oh my god. Change you around. There we go. Cooperate. I hate these tweezers, by the way. And if you're wondering why I'm using them, it's because I burnt my finger earlier and I can't grasp anything. Anyway, no excuses. Battery tray back on. Got your screws. Get your battery. And you have your charge cable and your light bar on the rear. You plug it in. Snap in like this. Controller presses together. And we're all done. I'll obviously test it. Put those 4 screws back in. Otherwise, we're done. So that's a joystick replacement on average in a PS4 controller. And other controllers, Xbox Ones, Nintendo Pro controllers, Wii U gamepads, pretty much any modern controller from Xbox One, PS4 generation and up, all use relatively the same modules. Some slight differences. Some are flat bottom, some are not. The only differences is in the PS5 modules. They do use different modules. They look the same, but there's a different resistance rating on them. Otherwise, same process, same amount of work. And yeah, there you go. So that's what's involved in repairing the drift in the controller. So yeah, we'll end it here. And I hope everyone has a good night. And thanks for tuning in.